Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 612, 612, November 19th, 2018, Monday. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thanks so much for the fantastic comments in the comment sections. Always great comments, but I've been dealing with some pretty tough issues this past week, and there's been some really good comments in the comment sections, and a couple things I want to address today that were in the comment sections yesterday in regards to the story I covered yesterday, and some questions about, can you subpoena the president, can you get him in front of a grand jury, all this type of stuff. That gets into some pretty complex stuff that I probably would be better off to leave you the links to some of these stories that I'm reading to get this information, but I'll go through it today, and I'll try to be better in the future of telling you my sources when I talk about these things, so you can go read these stories for yourself, and you'll understand where my information is coming from and what my thinking is and why my thinking is what it is on these topics. But let's go ahead and get into the news, and we'll just roll as we go. So first of all, it was a really good comment made by Larry yesterday, and he commented on something that I noticed, I think many of you noticed, and I actually did have it on one of my index cards. I just simply didn't get to it. As you know, I write down a bunch of things every day, and I rarely get to everything that I have written down. So I'm going to go ahead and comment on that, because I think it is worth commenting on. And what Larry was talking about, he's like, did you see the look on Governor Moonbeam's face, Governor Jerry Brown in California? And keep in mind, Gavin Newsom was standing there as well, and he also was very stone-faced. And what Larry is talking about is that little presser that Trump gave out in California when they were asking him about what was going on with the California fires. And, you know, he was really kind of a class act about that. He didn't take that opportunity to beat up on Newsom or Governor Moonbeam about the fact that it's their policies. He did mention briefly that things need to be done differently to prevent this from happening in the future, but he didn't really use it as an opportunity to really just beat up on him there. But clearly, when you look at the video and you see the look on Governor Moonbeam's face and Gavin Newsom's face, and you see their demeanor, they looked completely defeated and embarrassed. It was written all over Moonbeam's face. I mean, you could just see it. It was almost this look of, wow, what I'm witnessing here is because I made a very, very bad decision to listen to the environmentalists who've told me that we can't go into these forests and clear out these old growth forests. There's hundreds of thousands of dead trees and decades and decades and decades worth of dry material laying on the surface of these wooded areas. Many of them very, very close to homes. They were not allowed to build fire breaks because that would endanger some lizard or some, snail or something. And they've gone so far overboard that what they've done is they've created a perfect environment to create these types of disasters. And I went through the numbers yesterday. It's extraordinary, the numbers. This will certainly go down when the fires are finally put out. And I don't know how long it's going to take, but when those fires are finally put out, this is going to be really bad. It will be probably in the top 3, certainly top 5, maybe top 3 of worst disasters ever in California, which would include the last big earthquakes, the last 2 big earthquakes they had, which were devastating. So this is a major, major disaster, and it could have been prevented. And so you could see the look on Moonbeam's face. He understands that these policies have to change. And he looked very defeated, and he looked like someone who obviously realizes that he's made a lot of bad decisions, and that he is, you can say to a large degree, responsible for this destruction and these deaths of all these people. Because had he carried out sane policy, this stuff wouldn't be happening. You certainly would get these fires and stuff, but they would be controlled. You wouldn't have the mass loss of life and destruction of property. It's going to be devastating to California. They're going to have to get bailout money from the federal government to try to assist them. I don't know where you even get the firefighters to fight all these fires. I assume they're coming in from other states. But it's an absolutely horrible situation going out there. It could have been prevented. It never should have happened. And this is exactly what is written all over the face of Governor Moonbeam as Trump is standing there. And again, Trump was a class act. He didn't take the opportunity to make it very political because he understands this tragedy, and I think he didn't want to make it political. But he did say that, you know, this shouldn't have happened. It could have been prevented, and we need to do things differently to prevent this from happening in the future. So he didn't take a personal dig at Governor Brown, but he certainly made it clear that these policies in California have to change. And I think that's finally gotten through to Governor Moonbeam. And so you might actually see that this is important, because you're probably going to see Governor Moonbeam is going to have to stand up and address this issue, and he's going to have to tell the truth. He's going to have to lay it out straight and say, look, you know, we're a green state. We want to be environmentalists. We're all good for all that. But quite honestly, my friends, we made some bad decisions here. We went too far. We have got to put human lives and property over snails and owls and little insects and birds that can find some other place to go. And they do. When their environment gets a little bit unhospitable, they go somewhere else. And so, yes, Larry, I did notice that on the video, and it's written all over Governor Moonbeam's face. I mean, it's really obvious what he is feeling and what he is thinking. And again, Gavin Newsom, I mean, he was just stone-faced. He also realizes that, you know, a lot of bad decisions were made in the pursuit of trying to be these environmentalist champions. All they've done is just help to destroy a lot of property and get a lot of people killed. And I think Californians in general are about to have a serious wake-up call, because this is devastating. And it is going to go down as one of the top 3 worst disasters in the last probably 100 years in California. It's a mess. And I think now this will hopefully bring these people to their senses on this issue, at least to some degree. Thank you very much, Larry. A lot of people asking about the article that I was referring to yesterday when I was talking about the fact that on October 12th, Mueller and the DOJ went in to a judge and advised the judge that if Trump attempts to declassify documents that are sensitive to the Mueller investigation, they will consider that obstruction of justice. And they went to the court to have that conversation with the judge, and they also told him that this has been made clear to Trump, which means that had to be Rodenstein, and that may be what they talked about on that little plane ride that Rodenstein was on with Trump. But there's a lot more going on with this issue. But if those of you who want to read the article for yourself, just go on over to realclearinvestigations.com. realclearinvestigations.com. Look for the story by Lee Smith. 2 days ago it was in the main page story, but after a day or two it'll get bumped over to the right hand column on the web page. So if you'll look in the right hand column of the web page and go down the right hand column, it's a really popular story. As long as it remains a popular story, people will be clicking on it. It will stay on that right hand side, and you can read the story for yourself, and it lays out exactly what I told you yesterday. I also took information from ongoing stories that have been appearing in Politico, which I'm not a big fan of Politico. It's left wing, but they do a really good job on this issue because they have people who are former DOJ, veteran DOJ prosecutors and attorneys who have access to information from people within the current DOJ. They have people who are involved in the court system. They actually do have reporters who do go to the court hearings. They have reporters who dig into what's going on. A lot of this stuff is dealing with sealed indictments and things and such. But Politico has been reporting on these things for months. I was following this stuff going all the way back to midsummer when this whole issue of will Mueller try to subpoena Trump and can he do that, and that whole battle began. That was back in July, August of this past summer. That's when I began looking at these stories, and Politico has continued to follow and do stories following up on this issue, and there's a lot that you can learn from there as well. I'll cover some of that here in a little while when I get back on that issue of what I'm talking about. So that's where my information came from for the video that I did yesterday. Multiple reports in Politico, my own knowledge of past history. I do understand on the other flip side of that, of what Trump's lawyers have said and what a lot of legal experts go on Fox News and say, or write opinion columns and say. I'm aware of both sides of the issue of whether or not you can subpoena a president or not. This is something that will be decided in the courts, as it always is. But there's information out there that suggests that it's already being decided in the courts. It's not reported in mainstream media is because these are sealed cases. They're not public. And therefore, unless you have someone on the inside who can get leaks about this stuff, or unless you can connect the dots and what things are happening and what lawyers are saying as procedures are moving forward, you can begin to draw conclusions about what may be happening. So this is where it's all coming from. So Lee Smith, Real Clear Investigations, is where you'll find the primary article I was referring to regarding yesterday's video, but you can also look at Politico and you'll find stories there as well regarding that as well. And you can just Google Politico Mueller subpoena Trump, and there you'll find it'll pull up a page with probably 15 stories, from recent stories all the way back to the middle of the summer, and you can read through them and you can follow what's been going on behind the scenes with these sealed cases and sealed indictments, of which there are now 3 that we know of that are in reference to something Trump-Russia related, brought forth by Mueller and the DOJ. Whether or not one of them has Donald Trump's name on it, we don't know. Well, I was a little surprised that Lindsey Graham was not on Maria Bartiromo Sunday morning, but Goodlatte and Nunes were. So let's go through just briefly what we learned from these interviews. First, Nunes. Nunes says that he has given a list of 40 witnesses that need to be interviewed. Some of them have been interviewed already once. He wants them interviewed again. And he has moved this list over to Bob Goodlatte. Nunes says that his investigation, for the most part, is done, and that he says that he has 4 buckets of information that he wants declassified. That would be the FISA page, the Carter page, FISA warrant, 20 pages of that, which he says will blow the entire thing wide open. The Bruce Orr 302s, of which there are 12. The exculpatory evidence that was not presented to the FISA court, and also the emails from the Gang of 8. Nunes believes that if all those things were declassified, that the entire Spygate Mueller witch hunt would be over immediately, and there would be a special counsel appointed to investigate Spygate. Now, he understands he will not be head of that committee. He's essentially done. He has passed his information over to Goodlatte along with the list of witnesses. So that's where it ends, it looks like, for Nunes. Then we get Goodlatte talking to Maria Bartiromo, and he says that he wants a private interview with Lynch and Comey. He says that the reason they want a public interview is because anytime they're asked about anything that they really want to get answers to, Comey and Lynch can say, well, that's classified. We can't talk about that in an open hearing. So they don't want that to happen. They want to ask questions that you cannot ask in a public hearing. They want to ask questions that you can only ask in a classified setting. And Lynch and Comey both know that, and so they're trying to play this ruse on Goodlatte. Goodlatte says that's not going to work. He is going to subpoena both. In fact, he already has sent out the subpoena on one of them, I think, last Monday, and the other one will go out this Monday. We expect that the hearing dates we're hearing right now will be December 5th and December the 13th or 18th. Can't remember which of the two. But in the month of December, those closed session subpoenas will be issued to Comey and Lynch, and Goodlatte expects that they will appear, and he expects to get some answers from them. Goodlatte, of course, along with Gowdy, is retiring, and so he'll be gone January 3rd. And of course, he told Maria Bartiromo when she asked him about that, he said, what's going to happen is that the investigations are now going to shift from the House investigations that began with Nunes and Goodlatte and Gowdy are now going to go over to 2 committees in the Senate. One of them being the Judicial Committee, where Lindsey Graham will be the chair. Goodlatte says that he has spoken several times to Lindsey Graham and has been moving the information and will continue to move the information from their investigation, from all the witnesses they've talked to, will simply move that over to Lindsey Graham, and it will now move into the Senate Judiciary Committee. And he said that that investigation will continue, but it will continue through Lindsey Graham and the Judiciary Committee, and they have a lot of information and a lot of witness testimony, a lot of documents that they're going to be presenting to him, which I assume some of that's already happened and is already under review. And of course, Lindsey Graham said he is going to investigate the Right Reverend Clinton's emails, the handling of the email investigation by the FBI, the Spygate, the FISA warrants, the informants into the campaign, and all the rest. Nothing was mentioned about Papadopoulos giving a testimony, or Carter Page, or even Mifsud. That never came up. Unfortunately, I was hoping that they would talk about that. The last word we have, though, is that Stephen Rowe, the lawyer for Mifsud, says that he's in the process right now of making arrangements for Mifsud to come and testify. Whether that's open or closed hearing, I don't know. I know Papadopoulos is emphatic that he wants a public hearing. He wants to tell his story in public. But he says he's already had a closed session with Congress. He's willing to have as many closed sessions as they want, but he wants an open hearing. And let's hope that happens. The other committee in the Senate that's also going to be taking on this Spygate story is Ron Johnson. And Ron Johnson's pretty good. Sometimes I'm with Ron Johnson, sometimes I'm not. But I think he's reasonably a straight shooter. I kind of put him on the level of a Gowdy, like a guy that I kind of trust, kind of don't trust. You never know. Depends on which way the wind's blowing. But he heads up the Senate Oversight Committee. So the committees in the House, the Intelligence Committee, Nunes was over, and the Oversight, the Joint Committee, which is Oversight and Judicial in the House, this is all going to move over to Lindsey Graham's committee, the Senate Judiciary, and into Ron Johnson's Senate Oversight Committee. These will be the two committees that will now pick up the ball and move forward with the Spygate story, investigation, whatever you want to call it. So it's not going away, it's just moving. And actually, as Larry mentioned in a previous video, the Senate actually has more power than the House, particularly in these types of matters. The Senate Judiciary Committee is one of the most powerful committees in the Congress. And if Lindsey Graham stays true to his word, things should heat up. Ocasio-Cortez has done a video where she is literally calling for an overthrow of incumbent Democrats. She wants Democrats, commie-crats essentially, to primary establishment Democrats in 2020, and she's calling on them now to go ahead and start making preparations to do that. She wants commie-crats like herself all over the country to begin. She wants them to challenge every seat held by a corporate or establishment or, neoliberal Democrat. That's what she's calling for. And that cannot make Nancy Pelosi very happy. I can assure you of that. She's trying to play it off like she thinks it's all great. But I can promise you she's not believing that, because there's a real challenge to her leadership. I continue to believe she'll prevail simply because I know how things work in Washington. And it's very, very tough. It's very tough to knock out someone like a Pelosi who's backed by the establishment, controls the money, and she can make your life pure hell on earth if you're a member of her party in Washington with her as the leader. She can make things really hard on you. I'm not when I said that she'll put Ocasio-Cortez and these Democrats who oppose her in office buildings 4 blocks away from the White House in some building, because they own a lot of buildings in Congress, the federal government. They own a lot of buildings there in D.C. A lot of them are buildings they don't even use. They're just office buildings. And you can be given one of those. That's how they punish you when you don't go along with the leadership. That's why Jim Jordan sleeps on a cot in his office. And many other ones sleep on cots in their office because they're in a little building somewhere 2 or 3 blocks from the White House with no windows, probably no heat, nothing, just a little almost closet-sized office with nothing. No data line hooked up or nothing. I mean, they can really... Pelosi can put these people in a shoebox and make their life very difficult. And but they're certainly making a challenge. And I think, you know, we've gotten away because of the election and all the other things going on. We haven't had a dumbass of the week in a couple of weeks. So, again, I have to think that Nancy Pelosi, Madam Botox, receives Dumbass of the Week award. In fact, the whole corporate Democratic Party, because what they did in 2018 was they used the commie-crats, the social justice warriors, the extreme left of their party, to energize them, to activate them, to get them going, to win this midterm. They really didn't win as big as they should have, or they hoped to, but now they won enough of these, they got enough of these people elected that they're now there, and now they have to deal with these people. Now maybe they thought, well, once they get here, we'll put the clamp down on them, and I'm sure they will, but they probably weren't expecting these people to fight back as hard as they are. And, you know, Ocasio-Cortez and these people who think like her, they're, you know, they don't really understand exactly what they're into here. But they're about to find out. But certainly it would make Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats the dumbasses of the week, because they created a Frankenstein monster within their own party. And again, as I mentioned before in another video, here in about 3 or 4 months, right after, say, February, late February, early March, you're going to see all these Democratic candidates who want to run for president, of which there's probably 20 or 30, many of them who are senators, maybe some from the House, I don't know. But they're all going to go out there and stake out niche positions, and they're going to try to get their audience, you know, their supporters. This is going to cause a schism, and at the same time, you're going to have these far left-wingers who now actually have positions in government. They're not just on the outside looking in. They're now on the inside. They got seats in Congress, including in the Senate as well, the House and the Senate, and they are going to use their positions now to be full bore into their activism for far left causes such as Medicare for All and other things, which would be disasters for the Democratic Party, and Nancy Pelosi knows that. But this is going to cause a great schism and divide in that party. And Nancy Pelosi is not just going to have to get through this struggle to win the leadership position, which I think she will. She'll probably get through that. But in the spring, early spring of 2019, I don't know how in the world she is going to be able to control all the different directions that things are going to go in. And the fact that if she doesn't deliver on Medicare for All and all these far left-wing policies, the commie-crats, the extreme left, the SJWs in the party are going to turn on her massively. And I suspect that by the spring of 2019, that party will be in complete disarray, and Nancy Pelosi will be feeling the major, major pressure. She and the Democrats created a Frankenstein monster, which they are going to lose control of in the very near future. Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats are clearly the dumbasses of the year. Trump's got a new name for Adam Bug-Eye Fool Schiff. My name is Bug-Eye Fool Schiff. Or Schiff for brains. Trump sent out a tweet calling him Little Adam Shit. S-C-H-I-T-T. Little Adam Shit is what he tweeted out. Little Adam Shit. That's very, very funny. Okay, there's an interesting story on Epoch Times that you may want to go read. It's by Brian Cates. And in this story, he talks about the fact that he thinks everything is hinging on the IG report release, which he expects will come soon. He also discusses in the article a recent radio interview with the dishonorable James Comey, where he stated that he believes that Mueller's investigation is into the fourth quarter. It's a very good article. You might want to read it. There's some points I agree with, some points I disagree with, but it's pretty good. If you haven't read it, go to the epochtimes.com, look for the Brian Cates article. I believe it's, you can't miss it. It's right there. So, anyway, you might want to check that out. That's fairly interesting. I don't have time to go into it today, too many other things, but you may want to look at that for yourself. The mayor of Tijuana is now asking for help. They are being overrun by migrants. There have been over somewhere in the 4,000 to 5,000 range that have now engulfed the city. It's not Tijuana is not the kind of city that can handle that many migrants coming in. There's thousands and thousands more behind them. What has essentially happened is that these migrants have seen that Gavin Newsom got elected, and they know what he has promised, so they rerouted themselves 1,000 miles out of their way to go get into the United States via to California via Tijuana. So now all these migrants are going to flow through Tijuana. Some of you have seen the videos of residents in Tijuana literally fighting with these people in the streets. The mayor is now calling in an emergency, and he is asking for help. The migrants are headed all to Tijuana. They're going to try to enter into California. We will see what Gavin Newsom, how he handles that. Jerry Brown, I guess, is still the governor for now, or I guess to the first of the year, but soon it's going to become Gavin Newsom's problem, and we'll see if he stays with the hard line of what he campaigned on. If he does, it's disaster. Trump is saying that he did not know of Whitaker's views on the Mueller investigation until after he was appointed. Some people are saying, oh, that's got to be bullshit. Well, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, he certainly knows now, but I mean, I don't know that he followed Whitaker that closely before. I didn't. I didn't know who he was. Did you? So, I want to get back to... Actually, before I do that, there's two other items real quick. Papagalopoulos' latest tweet, he's saying that Misfit is directly tied to Christopher Steele and Alexander Downer's former chief of staff. And he's also saying that Misfit was on Jamil Khashoggi's payroll. How does Misfit end up connected to Khashoggi? And what does Papagalopoulos know about that? Well, he would know a lot about that because he was very connected in his energy business to Saudis and Israelis. And they are the two people who would know all about Khashoggi. We know that Khashoggi was a Saudi agent connected to Saudi intelligence and things and such, to probably the side of the family that's opposed to the current prince, because there's a lot of factions and infighting within that Saudi royal family, and obviously he was on the wrong side, would be my guess. Yesterday I told you that Emmanuel Macron was at 22%, or 32%. I learned from someone who's in France that no, it's not 32%. It is in fact 22%. Emmanuel Macron is at 22%. And the protests are continuing. There's now one person has been killed, dozens of police officers injured, 400 protesters have been injured. It looks like the protests are going to continue. They're getting larger. There could be general strikes. It could be a lot of things. Macron is doing all this because he wants more people to ride their bikes to work. Currently, about 2% of French people ride their bikes to work. That leaves 98% who drive, and they would have to pay these increased fuel prices. There's also 1,400 bikes stolen every day in France. A lot of bike theft. Someone took issue, which is fine, with the way I described the policy by Macron as a fuel tax hike. The reason that I use the term fuel tax hike is because that is the term that was used by the AP Newswire, which is the story the source of the story. The AP Newswire story said riots in France, and it said in the title of the story that it was due to largely because of fuel tax hikes. And I, just to check and make sure I didn't use the wrong term, I Googled again today, and there are many headline news stories saying it's because of fuel tax hikes. Now, obviously, it's designed to work with this green energy policy that Macron wants, and this connection to these carbon taxes. But the bill itself is not a carbon tax bill. It's not being described as a carbon tax. It's being described as a fuel tax, not a carbon tax. You can Google it if you like to double check that, but I got that tagline from the AP Newswire. Okay, let's get back to this issue about, can you subpoena the president? Are there subpoenas for Trump? There's a lot to go into here, and I only have a few minutes, but I'm just going to give you the basics, okay? As I stated yesterday, Real Clear Investigations is saying that on October the 12th of 2018, Mueller and the DOJ advised Trump and the judge in a court hearing that they would issue a subpoena if Trump declassified any documents that would be sensitive to the Mueller investigation. And we can assume when he says subpoena that he means subpoena to either A, a hearing with Mueller's team, or B, a grand jury. We don't know which, but it could be either. People have said, is that constitutional? Can you force the president? Well, that's an issue that's been debated. And it has to do with whether or not you actually have a crime, or you don't have a crime, or you have a certain degree of evidence that a crime may have been committed. And that is ultimately going to decide whether you can subpoena the president or not. Some people, legal people, disagree with that and say there's no way you can subpoena the president, even if he's committed a crime, even if you suspect he's committed a crime, even if you've got evidence he's committed a crime. Well, you know what? That's going to be decided by the courts, and no one knows how they're going to rule. But we know they're liberals, and we know whose side they're on. Ken Starr subpoenaed Bill Clinton, and he had to testify in front of a grand jury, and he lied. That's why he lost his law license. He lied to the grand jury. Can a president be subpoenaed? You bet your ass he can. Ask Bill Clinton. Giuliani said he would fight it, and he wrote a memo detailing why. Well, the very fact that Giuliani's having a conversation and said he would fight it tells you that there's a reasonable amount of evidence or belief that you can subpoena a president. It comes down to a legal issue and what evidence you have of a crime. Politico is reporting that since August, Mueller and Trump's lawyers have been in proceedings behind closed doors. This is not being talked about, but this has been going on since August, behind closed doors, dealing with sealed court cases, secret court cases you could call these, regarding the Trump-Russia collusion and the Mueller investigation in coordination with the DOJ, which is who? Rodenstein. So Politico is reporting that since August, Mueller and Trump's lawyers have been in proceedings over a grand jury subpoena. There are 3 sealed indictments that 2 sources tell Politico are tied to Trump-Russia investigations, and that there were 10 judges in a case looking at the case or hearing the case, being made aware of the case, informed about the case, about these sealed indictments. There is a court hearing, there's another court hearing, the next court hearing, which again, these are secret court hearings, but Politico's got people on the inside that are telling them the next one, and there have been many since the month of August. This has been battled out. They're battling out whether they can subpoena Trump, and it's all being done very quietly and secretly. But apparently Mueller's winning because they got 3 sealed indictments. The next one apparently is going to occur on December 18th. Of the 10 judges that have been involved in hearing this information brought by Mueller and the DOJ, one of them was a Trump appointee. Of the 10 judges, he has recused himself. And that tells you something. Why would he recuse himself? Obviously, it's because it has something to do with the president getting subpoenaed.